Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bringing you guys another Boruto 2 Blue Vortex discussion. Today, I want to shift gears and I want to talk to you guys about one of the lines in chapter 13, a 2 Blue Vortex that it should make your ears begin to start perking up in regards to these awakened Shinju, the current antagonist of the Boruto 2 Blue Vortex story, which is why in today's newest Naruto Explain video, we're going to point out how this one line in the chapter might finally lead us to the long-awaited debut of everyone's favorite Sixth Hokage, but in a way that nobody expected. Faster than you can say those magic words with me, Shinju DNA is love, Shinju DNA is life, because why not? Hashirama cells are the answer for every plot hole in the franchise of Naruto. So in chapter 13, there was a line in the chapter via Kashin Koji that really stuck out, and it was buried beneath all the talk about the 10 directions Shinjutsu and the ability to see all the possible futures that Kashin Koji saw, which was the line about there being an army of awakened Shinju. Now, when the spoilers dropped, a lot of people, they went right to the line where it said that there were 400 Shinju specifically that would comprise of the army. As always, this is where I remind you that while the officials for Viz Media and Manga Plus do have moments where you bang your head against the wall, most famously the official translations for Jujutsu Kaisen, which I don't bother reading, and at times some of the Boruto translations, it is important to keep in mind that we have to look at both the fan translations as well as the officials and compare them, because you can't solely rely on one translation over the other unless it's the outlier like Jujutsu Kaisen or My Hero Academia, where there's a massive gap in quality between the translations, where the officials are drastically inferior to the fan translations, because Japanese to English is not a word-for-word translation. It's extremely context heavy, and so it's very difficult, extremely difficult to translate into English. This is one of those cases where the official Boruto translation, it is closer to being on the money than the fan translation that came out. So in the official translation, Kashin Koji says when telling Boruto that the 10 Tails has gone beyond Code's control, and that as a result the Shinju will awaken and achieve a new form of evolution. This will result in multiple divine trees, each of their own free will. The key word being there is multiple. While the fan translation put a specific number on it, the lettering in Japanese, it was different. While it doesn't give a specific number, as in 1, 2, 100, 200, 300, it was more open-ended. It's kind of like saying it might be more than 10, it might be greater or less. So the correct translation would be the one that the official used, which is to say multiple, because the safe bet is that at the discretion of the translator, they get to choose what word to use, because it was open-ended phrasing versus having a set number that could or could not be wrong. More likely than not, it would be wrong. So the main point here is that now we're at a point where we know with absolute certainty that there'll be more Shinju coming, and most importantly, we know that at the end of the chapter there was a brand new Shinju being born. So we know that their numbers, they're in the process of going up by at least one. However, let me be extremely clear. I don't think that this current Shinju is Kakashi. I will probably have Kakashi on the thumbnail art because he is the topic of the video, nor do I believe that it's going to be Barry on Mode Naruto, which the latter I've already done a video explaining why I strongly don't believe it is Barry on Mode Naruto, so I won't go into further detail on those talking points. That being said, Kakashi being a future Shinju is not something that I ever put stock into, considering it as a possibility, until I was reading some of the messages from some of the patrons regarding this chapter. And while I don't think we're getting a Shinju version of Kakashi anytime soon, I don't see that happening, I do think this would be the most creative path to go down if we're being honest here. So allow me to explain what I mean. It's a really great example of the writing tool used by authors to do the following: break the rules and expectations of storytelling by subverting expectations. That basically means the genre rules of a story that you normally follow, you break them, and when it's done in a correct way, in a successful way, it can either be used for human purposes or it can be used to drum up interest to re-engage the readers. It's basically this giant misdirection, which is fitting for a series like Naruto that tells you a ninja must see through deception, where it puts the reader in a position where they misunderstand the significance of the path that the narrative was lulling you into via a false sense of security, and then it pulls the rug out from underneath you via misdirection and flips previously established narrative developments that leave the reader in a scramble mode trying to figure out what just happened, which at that point the author usually puts their foot on the gas and makes the reader read things at a faster pace, so everything they thought they knew was flipped on their head, and so now they're trying to play catch up. A great example of a currently running shonen series that does this extremely well, it is Chainsaw Man, which I won't go into spoilers, but those of you who keep up with my chapter reviews over on Anime Explained, you know exactly why I say what I say. The mangaka Fujimoto constantly uses this method to shake things up right when you think you have everything figured out, most notably the last chapter. For Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, you've got a chance to flip everything on its head right now if at some point in the future you do a Shinjuu version of Kakashi. From the moment Ikimoto said years ago that Kakashi, despite being a super popular Naruto character, had never showed up in Boruto's manga, and that it wasn't by mistake, and that there is a bigger plan at play for him. From that moment onward, the question that any fan who read that interview transcript from 2018 has ever asked is, when will Kakashi debut in the manga, and why would it be a spoiler if Ikimoto revealed what the plan for Kakashi was? Now, initially, I thought, man, this is definitely teeing up the return of Kakashi as Hokage, just given all the seeds that we had seen planted before this. For instance, you had Boruto vs. Kawaki take place in the flash forward sequence. There was no new face on the Hokage stone monument, so there appeared to be a situation where the Hokage position, it was in that funky place. There are questions that we were asking as a fandom, and they're the questions as follows. Was Naruto sealed away just prior to the events of the battle? Is that why Konoha was destroyed? And was it a long time ago? Where were Naruto and Sasuke? If it was going to be this question that we were asking, the question then shifted to, hey, did Kakashi or Tsunade potentially pull a Hiruzen and just return back into the Hokage position? Is that why there was no new face on the monument? We didn't know. For the longest time, that's how I viewed what it was going to happen, thinking this is the route we were going. Yet, when we open up the Boruto time skip, better known as Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, we see Shikamaru is the one as Hokage, and going by the title, Eighth Hokage, and everyone let out a collective and a very loud "Nani?" and began to start asking questions. How did this happen? This is a classic example of subversion of expectations based on the reaction by fans at that point in time in 2023. There weren't as many people who saw Shikamaru being the next Hokage, yet when you reread Boruto Naruto Next Generations, you saw all the foreshadowing that was there, that Shikamaru will be the one who takes on the Hokage spot after Naruto. But then we got another subversion expectation. Shikamaru might have been named Hokage, but he was not officially taking the job by having the Hokage ceremony on top of the rooftop for reasons we hadn't been explicitly told. Only that he asked for 3 years, waiting in length before it got made official, and we're running up on that deadline now. That brings you back to Kakashi and why Hokage Kakashi isn't a concept right now, and where exactly is he? This now transitions us also to why Kakashi as the awakened Shinju in the future, narratively, it's a really good idea. Depending on how long these awakened Shinju are going to be around, which I think they're going to be around for a pretty lengthy period of time, this might be the right card to play. We've already seen how some of the Awakened Shinju were used to take characters who were no longer relevant in terms of power levels and use the Awakened Shinju concept to build on to a point where Ada is saying that they're each beyond Code's level of power, to a point they're described as monsters in that regard, being, quote, out of his league, which is how characters like Bug and Moegi, characters who couldn't even hold Boruto's little Boruto Jr. when he's taking a leak, they're now suddenly strong enough to start causing major damage when they awaken as Shinju in the form of Momushi and Matsuri respectively. The awakened Shinju, from their names to their colors, they each have different meanings, with their color schemes being the opposite of the primary colors of who they are bidden after when you look at where they are on the color wheel. And their names are oftentimes a play on something to do with the original. So with Kakashi, you have something to work with here. You got quite a few things to work with. So depending on the name that you go with for the Shinju version, Kakashi Hatake means scarecrow in the farmland. Depending on the lettering system you use for Japanese to translate it, you can also play around with the name being something agriculture related or something to do with rices, like rice farms or Inari or one of the other Japanese deities that are associated with rice. The same way that Bug went from being a pun on computer bug and insects to being named after the most dangerous snake in Japan, the Mamushi, just given the power-ups that Matsuri and Bug got. When you add in Kakashi, who is currently stronger than he was in the 4th Ninja War, despite not having the Sharingan video coming later, and you add in that the chakra comes from the Ten Tails, Code's chakra from the Karma Seal that altered the Ten Tails, now you have Kakashi's chakra, you should have a monster. It would be one thing that the casual reader, which if you're watching this video, you are what is called a hardcore reader, a hardcore fan, because you're constantly consuming the content, versus a casual reader just being someone who checks in whenever the new chapter drops. Well, this right here would make him relevant to the casual reader because they wouldn't see this coming, just as we didn't see the return to the Hokage role being flipped on its head, and this would be enough of a shock factor that it could work. Narratively, you have a few ways to get to this point. There's a few vehicles that the narrative can take. So Kakashi is a retired shinobi. He literally does whatever he wants, and he takes missions whenever they catch his interest, and he doesn't have to answer anybody. Kakashi also has a habit of ditching his Hokage guards, which, given Asuma's daughter is very skilled, but she is very naive and prone to getting tricked by Kakashi, it makes sense that he'd be able to ditch Mirai whenever she was on guard duty for Kakashi. He's done it in the past. The idea that the man who was responsible for Sasuke, if he ever went rogue again, as stated in chapter 699 in Naruto, the idea that he would feel some sense of duty to go track down Sasuke to get answers for why he's helping Boruto, the man who he believes killed Naruto, it would be in character, and it would be something that worked when it came to the narrative surrounding this character. In terms of impact, it works for Boruto for this following reason. If something happens to Kakashi, a former Hokage, where he's made into a Shinjuu, it's going to be something that Boruto's going to feel guilt over, regardless as to whether or not it's warranted. Boruto is a sensitive child, and that could be something that leads to a great payoff. It wouldn't be a fan service moment where you do something for the sake of doing it, but more in line with how Edo Tensei were used to bring back fallen shinobi, both to scale the remaining characters as well as to finish up character arcs. While I've made no secret over the last 9 years I've been on YouTube that I absolutely hate the concept of Edo Tensei, even though I understood the writing inspiration behind it, and this would be a different enough of approach that I'd go into it with an open mind. But this is something I do feel is the only real path forward to use Kakashi in a meaningful way, just as the only real path forward is clicking this anime explain video on the left or clicking this Naruto explain video on the right. And as always, Shinju DNA is love, Shinju DNA is life.